in recent history, with the IMF support program helping stabilize inflation, strengthen the city, and restore investor confidence. But many Ghanaians are still asking the big question: is the economy truly recovering, or are we only experiencing temporary relief before another crisis hits? So in this segment, we are going to look at the real impact of the IMF program on businesses, households, jobs, taxes, and government spending. And we'll also be asking whether ordinary citizens are feeling the recovery, or if there is an improvement which is only visible within the economic statistics, which is on paper. So we'll explore whether we have learned lessons to avoid returning to the IMF for another bailout in the future. And at the table, we have the benefit of the experience
GTV, the authentic and trusted voice of Ghana. GTV, the authentic.
Welcome back. We apologize for the abrupt end to the broadcast. It was due to power failure, but we are back now, and I'll introduce my guest. We are talking about Ghana's relationship with the IMF and the end of the Extended Credit Facility Program, which now positions the country to transition into a PCI. And the doctor at our table will be explaining all those details to us. Dr. Edu Owusu-Sarkodie is a senior lecturer at the Department of Economics at the University of Ghana, and he's also executive director at the Center for Policy Scrutiny. Doc, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We just want to basically understand where we are now. We understand that the country was in crisis, and the IMF came on board, gave us some monies to put towards specific uses. After that, a couple of years down the line, we are being told by government officials that there is stability. But the people of Ghana are asking, is it economic stability or household stability? What should we see as ordinary Ghanaians to say that the country is stable?
Well, you know, the IMF, they are macroeconomists. So any country that goes to the IMF will be looking at their balance of payments, they'll be looking at macro figures, inflation, exchange rates. Before we went there, we were running out of reserves. Our inflation was over 50%. The city was depreciating. Balance of payment deficits here and there. So IMF's main objective is to help us stabilize these macro figures, the debt, balance of payment, reserves that I've mentioned. And so we have made the gains. I think when you take inflation, for example, inflation is like a thief. Let's say the way the thief was stealing your money is now small. In the past, the thief will steal your money at, say, 100. Now the thief is stealing 20 cedis. So is it a gain for you, the individual?
He's
maybe.
Still stealing from
yeah, they're still stealing, you know. The thief is still stealing, but just that he's stealing smaller amounts. So it's more like a gain for you, not big. The magnitude may not be big, but small gain. Let's take the exchange rate too. You know, in the past, one would need, like, say, 14 cedis to buy $1. Now you need, say, 11 cedis, 12 cedis to buy $1. That 2 cedis difference is a gain for those who would need dollars. They use cedis to buy $1. So the gains are a bit marginal. And the gains are for those who are a bit closer to the macro figures, like traders. If somebody was closer to the dollar, the sale of dollar, the person will benefit from it more. But if somebody sells cocoa on the street, that person may not, who doesn't deal in dollars, may not benefit directly from that. Another thing is that, you know, recently the president was, or the other ministers, the president and ministers were asking Aboso Kind, spare parts dealers, cement sellers to reduce their prices because the cedi had appreciated. And in fact, they were even caused by the minority that the ECG utility tariffs must be reduced because the cedi has appreciated. And these are the reasons we say that in economics, prices are sticky downwards. When the cedi depreciates, you see all these sellers increasing their prices. But when the cedi appreciates, then they feel reluctant to reduce their prices.
So we are seeing government celebrating the macroeconomics,
yes,
while the households think about the pocket economics.
Yes, and so it's not down to the household yet. That's why I'm saying that it benefits those who are a bit closer
to the dollar.
And a bit closer to the other macros. Those of us, you and me, who are a bit far, it will take some time to trickle down. In fact, the president has acknowledged that the macro figures are not enough. They are not an end in itself, but a means to well-being. So we are only waiting for the translation of these macro figures to the well-being. For example, in the IMF program, both the previous administration and the current administration, they have embarked on what we call tight fiscal and tight monetary policies. In other words, they're not releasing the money in simple terms. And so when they are not releasing the money, the growth will not come and employment will not come. So hopefully after this IMF program, they'll release the money, right? They will embark on what we call expansionary monetary policy and expansionary fiscal policy. In simple terms, release the money, let the money flow.
And that's where the danger is.
Exactly.
Because historically, we always see this strict discipline when Overwatch is looking through our books and ensuring that we stick to the agreement that we made. But once we come out of under that pressure and that scrutiny, we have historically thrown ourselves into a spending frenzy, which eventually lands us back at the doorsteps of the IMF. Yeah. Would this case be any different? And why should it?
Yeah, so the point I was making on expansion fiscal and expansion monetary policy is that the quality of expenditure is always key. It's not a matter of just spending, but the quality of the spending is the reason, the president has, inaugurated the value for money office, so that even if the project is 100 cedis, it should be 100 cedis. But if you inflate the figures to 150, you might think that you are increasing the expenditure, but the quality of the expenditure is just 100 instead of 150. And so we need to be disciplined with that. And historically, we have not been able to do that. That is why we keep going to the IMF, then we come back, we misbehave, then we go to them, then we come back. The last time we went to the IMF was the program ended in 2019. By 2023, 4 years down the line, in fact, I just did some statistics. I realized that since independence, it looks like on the average, every 4 years we go to the IMF. Every 4 years, on the average. So that batters your point. Is the reason there's this doubt. The IMF executive director said that there's a doubt by the international investors that we can keep the discipline. That's why they brought in the PCI to still keep us in check. The difference between the ECF and the PCI, the Standard Credit Facility and the Policy Coordination Instrument, is that for the ECF, there was money and there was a program. PCI, there's no money, there's no program. It's only advisory, technical advisory. So it is really not enforcing, but it gives a signal to the investors that, hey, IMF is still with Ghana, so we can do business with them. Now the household will benefit because when investors come, they bring in their money, growth is expanded, and employment can be generated. So it is that uncertainty about the credibility, in the eyes of the international community. That is why we have the PCI. So hopefully the PCI would help us to keep us in check. Remember that the NDC administration is in power now. Next year, they are going for their executive elections. Normally, when parties are in power, they overspend. Then the 2028 general election. So there's that fear or uncertainty about, the point you made about overspending. But because the PCI is going to be with us for the next 3 years or so, hopefully it will keep us in check and then we will be in the line. Okay. Let me land on this. Let me pick one of the variables, inflation. The Bank of Ghana's medium-term target has always been 8 plus or minus 2. Now inflation is around 3.4. So even if government spends or they misbehave or they overspend, With the presence of PCI, it's hopefully that they will not go beyond the upper band of 10. So that's the hope.
So they're giving themselves a good 7% room.
Exactly, to operate.
To operate,
to operate, yes.
The Finance Minister, Dr. Kasalato Forson, when he made the communication that Ghana had successfully concluded the IMF Extended Credit Facility Program, also told us that we're transitioning, as Dr. said, into a policy coordination instrument, PCI. And he stressed that, as we've said, it will not provide a financial bailout, but it will provide technical assistance, strengthen investor confidence, support policy coordination, and help catalyze fresh financing. And that's where I'm most interested in. What does it mean when we talk about catalyzing fresh financing? And what should the ordinary Ghanaian expect tangibly of these PCIs?
Let's put the conversation into perspective. Go back to 2022. In fact, from January 2022 up to now, the government of Ghana has not been able to go to the Eurobond market to raise bonds. In 2022, the door was shut to the government of Ghana. In simple terms, you can default. So when we give you money, you can't pay.
You don't trust that you'll be able to pay. But
pay.
The minister said we are not in a hurry to go back there anytime.
So yeah, let me develop the point. So now we may have access to it because our rating is a bit higher, and the presence of PCI. So if Ghana decides to go to the market door will be open to us, unlike the 2022 where the door was shut. That's one way of the financing. Whether or not we want to go to the bond is up to us. It's a decision that we have to make as a sovereign state. The other one is the debt exchange. You know, we did the domestic and then we turned attention to the external. It was a bit easier to restructure the multilateral debt, but bilateral and the commercial debts were a bit difficult. And so with the IMF program having concluded and with the PCI with our side, that multilateral, bilateral, and commercial crediting will also, the door will be opened. The other one is the concessional loans. If Ghana wants to get maybe a favor from World Bank, IMF, in recent times, we were told that the World Bank decided to give the government of Ghana some money at a favorable interest rate. So so 3 windows. First, the bilateral, multilaterals, the Eurobond, and then the concessional loans. And so that is why the minister was saying that then the door is open. The door is open does not mean we should enter, right? So I believe that for the past 4 years, we have not gone to the Eurobond market to borrow, and we have been fine. So I don't think there should be a rush.
We've been fine, but we have not been spending on as much as perhaps we even should have. Some people insist that more money should have been put into the system to keep the wheels turning, and that the way we are, it's like the bag is not open. We are not spending any money, so things are not moving.
Link it to the history, because our debt was so high, we had to restructure before. In fact, debt restructuring was a prerequisite to the IMF program. So if we had not restructured, there would be no way we'll get the program. And at this point, I want to say kudos to those who endured the painful haircut. They are the reason we are seeing the gains now. So all those individual and commercial bondholders who suffered haircut, we say we salute you. It is your sacrifice which has saved the country. And so if your debt is so high, you don't have to be thinking of borrowing. Today, our debt may not be too high, but the debt to GDP ratio is around 45%, less than 50%. It gives us some room. It does not mean we should go and borrow. So it gives us some room to do that.
Are we recovering or simply buying time?
I would say we have recovered. We have recovered from the symptoms that we were experiencing in 2022. What we haven't done yet is to build a resilient economy. So our economy is still fragile, that it may not be able to withstand external shock, any heavy external shock. And I'll give you a typical example. The Israel-Iran-US war. Look at what has done to diesel price and petrol price. Do you know that the April inflation was raised because of these 3 items, these 2 plus tomatoes? So now another shock is that the Ghana cannot import tomatoes from Burkina Faso. Can you imagine? So that's a shock. Plus the war. And these 3 tomatoes, diesel and petrol, they are the major reasons for the rise in inflation rate. So it tells you that we are still not resilient yet. We have recovered, but we are not resilient yet. It's more like a child. The child can walk small, but cannot run. So we are not resilient yet. We have to keep building. And where I would want to, rest my point on is the natural resource. The gold. Ghana's economy currently is being driven by gold production. And we are just fortunate to have gold prices rise, that level, to the highest level that we have seen in many years. If today gold price begins to dip, it will be so unfortunate for our economy. Ghana's economy will suffer. If gold prices fall today, our economy will suffer. So that's why I'm saying that we are recovered, but not resilient yet. We are still vulnerable to external shock, whether positive or negative. If gold price rises, it's positive. If the price drops, it's negative. If there's another war, we are still vulnerable. Burkina Faso, there were killings. See what has happened to tomato prices. So we are still vulnerable. We just have to build that resilience. We should leverage on our natural resource. If gold alone accounts for 68% of our exports, and if you multiply the gold production by the price, it may be almost equal to government's total revenue and grants, only gold. And I always tell my students that tertiary education can be free in Ghana, financed by only gold. Tertiary education can be free in Ghana, financed by only gold. But the bottom line is that we do not get enough to our public finance. Yes, there is gold production. Yes, there's increment in gold price. How much of that does it come to our public finance? Minimal. Our participation interest in crude oil production is 16%. And so this is where I want the PCA or whatever, the next phase of our economy should be, how does Ghana position itself to take advantage of the numerous natural resources that we have to develop our country? For me, that should be the point. If you ask me as an economist, I do not see anywhere else that the government can get enough money to transform our economy except the natural resource.
And that is what we've also overexploited, and our rivers are paying the price for it. So you're asking yourself, when we talk about the natural resource as a true backbone of the economy, what Gold Board has been doing, and Daman Gold has, brought a second check. The gold reserves are being boosted up. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about, to make sure that enough of the natural resource is feeding into the public purse so that it's available for us to spend?
It's a good start. It's a good start. The domestic gold purchase program has been novel and it's innovative, and it has helped our economy. It's one of the reasons we are seeing our city appreciate. We are seeing the central bank building reserves. We had over 36, 38 tons, and about half were sold. So to help stabilize the currency. So we have started well. So in addition to this, we should increase our participation interest in the natural resource. Just this week or last week, somebody said at IAA program that we should nationalize the natural resource, and the Chamber of Mines said it's not. For me, the conversation should be whatever we have to do as a state to increase our stake in the natural resource, we have to do it. Then you talk about the royalties. For me, the royalties, 5%, 10%, has been around 5%. It was 3% and until 2011 when it was raised to 5%. We should increase the royalties. We have the gold. We have the gold. We should increase the royalties. I never knew that even gold, there's quality difference. I never knew. This country is so blessed with natural resources that with cocoa, our quality is higher. With crude oil, our quality is higher. Even with gold, our quality is higher.
Yet we are still here.
Exactly. So increase this Gold Board activity 1 is okay. Royalties increment. Then increase our stake in the natural resource. And then finally, what we have been teaching our students from level 100, value addition. We keep exporting these raw materials in their natural state. We should try and establish the factories. We were talking about employment. If we export gold in a raw form, it's not going to generate any employment, much employment. But if we have 10 factories scattered all over the country refining gold,
that would require a massive, investment in that sector. Investor confidence is one of the key things to discuss here. The IMF is simply sitting at the table so that when people look at our table, they think, oh, that looks like a solid team and we can do business with them.
Yes.
So they are at the table and they're still advising us. So how are we still free from their, what do we call it, input, advice, conditionalities?
You have a very smart question, because I have not seen in the IMF document where they emphasize on taking advantage of the natural resource. They don't preach that, they preach the macroeconomy. And in fact, you read the documents, they just mentioned that Ghana's natural resource extractive sector will grow by just 12%. Full stop, that's it. They didn't tell us how we position ourselves. They didn't tell us how we invite the investors to partner us to grow. So we have to grow, or we have to develop this framework ourselves. The domestic gold purchase program was the previous administration's idea. It wasn't the IMF who told them. Somebody sat down and said, hey, we have gold in abundance. We have to build more reserves. How? Let's buy the gold with cedis so that we don't lack dollars. So that's somebody's brainchild. And I'm sure there are so many experts at the Ministry of Finance, Bank of Ghana, and the universities that can say that government can form a team, technical team of experts that can develop a framework where Ghana can position itself to take advantage of the abundance of the natural resource. Because I don't think the IMF will be interested in that. But for me, that is a game changer. So we shouldn't, even though we have the PCI, IMF PCI, we should not rely on them. We should not wait for them. We should not wait for them. We should find our own experts and develop the framework. The gold purchase program that you mentioned, it wasn't developed by a foreigner, it was by a Ghanaian. So we have the brains, we can do more.
I'm glad you're mentioning, Ghanaian-owned, because state-owned enterprises have been a bane, almost like an albatross in the neck of government for a long time, because most of them keep making losses. And so the conversation is, how do we make these enterprises more viable? ECG has always been on the block. COCOBOD has always been on the block. How do we ensure in this post-economic credit, extended credit facility era, that under PCI, state-owned enterprises will, their output will be maximized and there will be some profitability due to efficiency?
Well, I think the IMF executive or the authorities even mentioned that one of the threats to the stability that we are enjoying is the state-owned enterprise debt. Because when we talk about Ghana's general debt, we add their debt to the central government debt to make the general debt. So it's still a threat. It's a risk ahead of us. The state-owned enterprises must be run as a business. The model
Does that
must
mean
be
privatization?
The model must be a private model, not a public. They are there to serve the public. There's social benefits in some of these institutions, so we should not be so strict on them. But I'm saying that the model to use should be private, not too much of extreme profit, but they can make some amount of profit and still pursue their social responsibilities. If we have this PPP model, you mentioned the ECG. ECG privatization, some people are against, some people are not against. Let's interrogate ECG's problem. It's an issue of revenue collection. I think the management is fine, but it's an issue of revenue collection. Can we privatize the revenue collection and then leave the rest so that they do not cause inefficiencies? Because if you privatize state enterprise, they may cause inefficiencies. The reason we have social welfare, the reason we give some of these things to a state-owned enterprise is social welfare. But if you make it 100% private, they may not take their minds to the social welfare. They may give it to those who can pay. Yes, and then leave our friends who are at the bottom of the income ladder. So identify the weaknesses and resolve it with a private model and still keep the social welfare objective.
Okay. Now let's talk about the idea that if the IMF has exited, now we are free to do whatever we want. So some Ghanaians may be expecting immediate relief from some of the conditionalities that were imposed because of the extended credit facility. Would that be realistic? And where specifically can we expect to see major changes under this PCI?
One of the things that I even disagree with the IMF is the 0% financing of the central bank, that the central bank should not support the finance ministry with any printing, any financing. And I understand where they are coming from, because you just went through the DEP and you gave 48 billion haircuts to the central bank. But I think going forward, some amount of financing should be okay. Even if it's 5% financing, I think it should be fine, because we expect the government to construct the road to our hometown. So if the BOG can give the finance ministry 5% financing to construct the road, it should be fine. We should be moderate with that. There are other issues like the utility adjustment. That is not clear, because if they peg it on the cedi dollar exchange rate, then when the cedi appreciates, one would expect a reduction in the utility tariff. So they should be clear with the formula that they are using. But something that the IMF said, which I agree with them about the utility, is that they said the Ghanaians, or in general, we were not paying the right price. The price we were paying for our electricity was not enough for ECG to even break even. In economics, we call it the economic price. So I believe that in as much as we want to pursue social welfare, we must still pay the economic price. The other issues of the natural resources I've mentioned, they may not be interested, but we have to take it on ourselves to do that. And that general economic transformation is not in the model of the IMF. So in spite of the presence of the PCI, we must develop our own economic transformation model domestically and pursue it. So, and also the quality of expenditure. I've told you that it is not just enough to spend, to tell Ghanaians that you spend 100 billion. The question is on what? Is the quality of the expenditure. Somebody may spend 100 and give us so much, another person may spend 200 and you don't see the results. So the quality of the expenditure is always key. And the government expenditure influences the Ghanaian economy by up to 42%. Let me give you a typical example. If the government constructs road, see how economic activities spring up around the road construction. When the road is constructed, it eases traffic. You can go to Accra, Kumasi and come, do your business. So the government expenditure influences the economy by up to 42%. So you will expect the government to spend quality spending so that businesses can thrive on that. Because today in Ghana, I don't see many businesses that will provide water, electricity, road, etc. These are all public goods that must be publicly provided. But the other ones, we should really check them. The issue of employment, issue of transformation, issue of... I'm even surprised that the IMF in recent times, they are talking about social intervention programs, because the model of IMF is macro, strict. And this inflation.
So they don't care about food prices. And the fact that food prices remain high, even though inflation is low, and salaries are still
they may low. They may care so much about the government reducing its expenditure, even if they have to lay people off.
Even if they have to cut
in the 80s,
or not increase salaries.
You remember structural adjustment program in the 80s? Ghanaians were laid off, redeployment, retrenchment. That was their model. So lay people off so that you can reduce your expenditure. But now I think they are more flexible. They have faced criticisms by Stiglitz and Jeffrey Sachs. These are development economists. I'm a development economist. We pay attention to poverty, inequality, and those in the vulnerable bracket. But you see that in this IMF program, they have praised the government of Ghana for investing in the
MMDs,
i.e. the school,
where you
free SHS, etc. So these are also there for us. This is not an IMF idea, it's a Ghanaian idea, and most of these things started way back in 2003, 2004 under President Kufuor, and God bless his soul for opening his arms for us to get these social intervention programs. And the IMF is still telling us to continue to invest in these things. So these are things that we cannot allow or leave it in the hands of the PCI IMF. Ghanaians must do it. But they will leave after 36 months, they are going. So are we saying that when they
learned the lessons? So that would mean that we can survive their absence. Have we learned? Can we say we've learned the lessons?
History is not telling us that. I think that is why we have asked them to stay. Because history, you mentioned the history at the beginning, history is not telling us that we have to learn. We are 69 years old, a country. For how long would we continue to allow IMF to help us, resolve our economic situations? So can't we do that ourselves? Rwanda, When we started our fourth republic, Rwanda was still fighting. They had just ended their genocide. Today, go to Kigali. Well, the country of Rwanda is not up to Ghana, but I mean, their capital city. And they are very serious about what they are doing. Kagame said that the Rwandan also deserves a new car. So they banned the importation of second-hand cars. Can you have that in Ghana, that the Ghanaian also deserves a brand new car, and develop the industries and make it affordable? There are
some car assembly plants around.
Exactly, but not enough.
But prices are not necessarily
again,
as low as
I went to China in 2019, and one of the models that I learned from them is that they said that for 40 years they were developing the agricultural sector. 40 years. The emphasis was the agri. And their objective was that no Chinese should be hungry. No Chinese should be hungry. Today, DSS releases the inflation figures. You check the list, top 10 items with the highest inflation. Do you know some of them? Charcoal, ginger. Charcoal and ginger in Ghana. Charcoal and ginger are a problem. Can you imagine? Charcoal, ginger. Top 10 items with the highest inflation in Ghana. Charcoal, ginger. Should I mention the plantain, the green one? Plantain. Why should charcoal, ginger, plantain be Ghana's headache?
Okay.
So we should have that agricultural model saying that, well, we know where the inflation is coming from when it comes to food inflation. Let's go to charcoal. Let's go to ginger. Let's go to plantain. What is the issue? Let's deal with the issue.
And straight away, we take that off the list.
Exactly.
And we'll be saving ourselves some money. Now, before we leave,
exactly,
where are the risk areas for us in this, post-credit era? Because we are hearing IMF exit and people are already excited. But what pitfalls should we avoid? And what's the optics? What's the future looking like?
The first one you mentioned is the state-owned enterprises. Their losses are too much, and it's a risk we have to deal with as a country. The second one is the energy. The do so. Even in our studio, we're experiencing some challenges. So the energy, there are some still structural weaknesses in our economy, and the energy is one of them. So we have to, again, deal with them decisively as a country. And then the almighty overspending. When they are not here, we misbehave, we overspend.
Corruption.
Galamsey, corruption. These are all things that IMF will not tell you. IMF will not give you a model to fight corruption. They will not give you a model to fight Galamsey.
So why are they still here then? If they've done...
It's to consolidate. That's why I've said they are macro people. Okay. It's to consolidate the macros. The inflation, the exchange rate, the balance of payments, the reserves, debts. That's their model. But things like Galamsey, how is that? Unless maybe we ask them to help us design a model, a framework to deal with the Galamsey. But there are so many things that we have to deal with them ourselves. And I said, if they leave, so what? So we are going to say that when they leave after 36 months, as the minister said, we are going to follow them and pack our things and follow them. That IMF, please stay, because we cannot manage ourselves.
Okay, what next? We've moved from IMF financing, but we are now under IMF supervision.
Yes. That's to check the overspending and the macros, especially the macros, to help us to build more reserves. Because when you have more reserves, then you can save your currency from deep depreciation, which will affect so many variables. The inflation, the medium-term target, A+ or -2, will still be checked. There's the government expenditure, the quality of expenditure. There's always a gap between revenue and expenditure, which we call budget deficit. There's a cap. We have a Fiscal Responsibility Act, the Fiscal Council, but the IMF will make sure that the Fiscal Council is empowered to ensure that the government does not spend over its means. So with that, I think we are good to go. But I conclude by saying that the natural resource, IMF will not tell us that we should leverage.
Do it ourselves.
We have to do it ourselves.
Doc,
and be a developed nation.
I think I'll definitely take your economics class. You've simplified things for me so much. Dr. Edu Owusu-Sarkodie is a senior lecturer at the Department of Economics, University of Ghana, and executive director at the Center for Policy Scrutiny. He's been our guest explaining to us what Ghana's path should look like post the exit from the IMF extended credit facility, with the country now transitioning into a policy coordination instrument with the IMF. And that's the end of our conversation. Kudos to you. Have a pleasant day, Doc.
Thank you.
And we'll take a quick break. When we return, more birthday shouts coming your way to all you lovely Mayborns. We'll be back with Jay Gabra. Stay with us.
It's my birthday. We're the celebrate. Raise your glass high. Everybody say, it's my birthday. We the keep on nice. Family and friends. Do all the fans. Step out clean. Brand new day. Sun they shine. We the okay. Plenty music. DJ they play. Happiness for ground. We the okay. Smile for your neighbor. Shake your hand. Shout out music. Be that sound. Don't worry today. Make you understand. Life too short. We go dance for the last. My birthday. We're the celebrate. Raise your glass high. Everybody say, it's my birthday. We the keep on hands. Family and friends. Do all the fans. Since I see this, that for sure you say God is here. I just to celebrate my...
Hi, thank you for staying with us. Time now for some birthday shout-outs. It's time now for the Birthday Diaries on GTV Breakfast. My name is Jay Gabra. So for all you Mayborns, you know who are celebrating your birthday today, you have a few dedications coming up. I want to begin with you, Hilda. Your parents are celebrating you today and say happy birthday to our dear daughter. May the Almighty God bless you, prolong your life, and protect you. We really love you. And this one here is going out to TD, who is at the GBC HR division. A glorious birthday to you. May this new year be filled with joy, peace, rest, and countless testimonies. A dedication coming to you from Joyce, also with the HR division. DJ Tangible, Lord, who is with Lord FM, this coming from Honorable Akisme, Sefi Bekwa, who says, happy birthday to you, the #1 DJ holding it down, Sefi Bekwa. May God bless you with more life, joy, success, and continuous elevation. Bertha, you're also celebrating your birthday today. May your journey ahead be filled with kindness, and may you achieve everything in life. On to Officer Benjamin, happy birthday to you as well. Enjoy your day, stay blessed, wishing you joy and success. A dedication coming to you from Mabel. Peter also answer, aka Apostle, this is coming from your team, Jesus Family. We want to wish you happy birthday. And they're also saying, may you be blessed beyond measure. Thank you for all you do. They love you very, very much. Reverend Wisdom, a dedication from now saying happy birthday. May God enlarge your territory and guide your steps now and forever. Ms. Sandra Frimpong, happy birthday to you. May grace speak for you, favor locate you, and joy never depart from your home. A dedication comes from Reverend Emmanuel Nate to you. This one says, happy birthday to my beautiful sister Edmina. May this day bring you endless smiles and good health. I love you, my sister. And this comes from your brother, Enoch. And to you as well, happy birthday to a former area head of the Church of Pentecost, Emmanuel Kwesi Akwa. Warm wishes from Peggy Amadonko. Happy birthday going out to you, Dr. Daniel Edu of Atlanta, Georgia, and greetings from Peggy Amadonko. Happy birthday, Stephen, aka Stevo, all the way in Hamburg. Your wife, children, and family say have a blessed celebration. Happy birthday, Mrs. Angelina of Ashoma Estate. Your husband, children, and all your loved ones